Path of Exile 2 has been live for just over a week. We've addressed some feedback already and are working on more fixes for key pain points in an upcoming patch. The full patch notes are coming soon, but check out some of the more significant changes below. Like we mentioned last week, we'll be adding the capacity to fast travel between checkpoints within an area, as well as adding many more checkpoints to areas, generally at all entrances and exits. Meaning if you find these first, you'll be able to instantly travel to them and continue exploring. We'll also be making passive point respecking cheaper, especially at higher levels. It had a relatively aggressive curve, getting more expensive with character level. We flattened that curve. It won't exponentially grow as much. This should generally result in a 50% less gold cost for respecking between the start and the middle of the end game. Trial of the Sekimos. Players were finding the Trial of the Sekimos particularly frustrating in close range, so we've reworked how honor damage scales when in close range, as well as fixing an important bug that was causing players to take far too much honor damage from damage over time. Honor damage now scales down based on distance to enemies. When in close range, you'll take 35% less honor damage, tapering off if you move further away. Fixed a bug where damage over time was dealing 3 times as much damage to honor as intended, and it fixed a bug where honor resistance was only applying to 2/3 of that damage. We were confused too. Skitter golems no longer use basic attacks, and instead they now just explode. Serpent Clan's burrow and ambush attack has been improved, visually telegraphing and cannot be used from as far away. Volcanoes created by Rattle Cage's Fissure Slam now last half the duration. Endgame and monster balance. Generally, the balance in endgame maps was more punishing than intended, so we've toned down the damage in a number of ways and disabled a certain on-death effect where the telegraphing was not as clear as it should have been. Maps no longer have additional elemental resistance penalties inherently applied at Tier 6 and Tier 11 higher maps. It is now consistent across the entire endgame. Chaos damage now scales less aggressively over the endgame. Critical strikes from monsters now deal 40% less bonus damage. Lowered the baseline monster difficulty of breach encounters primarily by reducing the frequency of the elite monsters appearing. Volatile crystals modifier is disabled. We'll revisit this in the future pending telegraphing improvements. Purple explosives created by volatile plants modifier on rare monsters now deal significantly less damage. The Siphon's Flash Charges modifier on monsters now drains 10 times less flash charges per second. This was unintentionally draining way too many. These changes should generally result in an endgame that is much more survivable than before. We will continue to address problematic cases as they arise. Character and item balance. We've made charm modifiers on belts substantially more common and now appear at much lower levels. The of symbolism modifier now appears from level 23 onwards, and of inscription now appears from 64 onwards. Electrocute is now 25% harder to build up, but the damage penalty has been removed from the support gem. Added a new lightning damage and electrocute cluster in the passive tree in between ranger and monk. It is now more difficult to chain freeze enemies by reducing the amount of freeze buildup applied after a freeze has been applied. The Hunter's Talisman Notable now grants +1 charm slot. The small passives leading up to it now grant the stat it formerly gave. The Charm Helper text has been updated to indicate that you cannot have more than 3 charm slots unlocked, so that we can add more sources of it in the future. Skill and support gem balance. Since launch, We've unfortunately had to nerf a few skills that were far too overpowered. How do we define overpowered? Basically, it's a situation in which a skill is so powerful that players feel no other method of playing the game is viable. Generally speaking, we are trying to do this in a way that doesn't make a build bad, but we can make mistakes. Ideally, any truly meta-shifting changes will only happen at the same time as a content patch with a new league to play in. That doesn't mean we haven't been looking at underpowered skills and support gems. We've got a number of changes planned which should improve some of these skills. The full list of changes will be in the patch notes, but here's a sample of what you can expect. improvements to rolling slam and all shield skills, various bow skills, especially the skills used to generate frenzy charges, bone skills and chaos damage over time spells, crossbow skills, and some of the underachieving quarterstaff abilities. Alongside all of these skill gem improvements, we've also done a pass over to support gems. We've added 2 new supports and removed or lessened the penalty on many others, notably the fire, lightning, and cold exposure supports. Added the tremor support totem, which can be used to give up to multiple more aftershocks to skills with a damage penalty. Added a bidding support gem, which can be used to give more damage to the command skills of supported minions. The fire exposure, lightning exposure, and cold exposure support gems no longer penalize damage of supported skills. They now have a mana cost multiplier. There are also some notable nerfs to a few remaining overachieving skills. Skeletal Arsonist spirit costs now match the other 2 skeleton mages. This should result in a slight decrease in the number of arsonists at higher level. Okay, that's what I'm playing right now. A nerf to damage over time component on very high levels of Tornado and Vine Arrow. Okay, I don't know anything about this. They were never intended to be dealing damage themselves, but more so act as a way for other skills to propagate damage. Magnetic Salvo can now only use your stuck lightning arrows as opposed to those created by your party members. As we wind down for the holiday season, we wanted to thank you for our most successful launch ever. We could not have done it without all of your support. A lot of our team will begin to take some much needed rest over the next few weeks, but we look forward to getting back in the new year refreshed and ready for an exciting year of development in 2025. Happy holidays, Exiles. Okay, so in general, with this patch, it seems like they are making the game better. I'm glad that they're taking a look at the trials here. I like that they at least had the guts to come out and talk about why they have nerfed certain things. I don't think this patch is as exciting as the other one, and I guess everyone deserves to have their holidays and get some rest and relaxation. So maybe we won't be getting any more patch notes for a few weeks. But in general, the game is improving. Yeah, excited for it.